Thanks so much, Don, for coming. I haven't seen you for ages, and
Feels like it's been a year or so.
I think you're really busy, I know, but and great to hear that you're investing in the FinTech domain, because I have a lot of respect for you as an investor and a person. So please tell me, what's your passion and focus personally in the domain?
I guess in FinTech, it's sort of interesting. A lot of times when we first got involved, we got involved with Lending Club at the beginning, and if I think about the passion that we had, the thing I think motivated us was it kind of felt like the loan officer was now being converted into software, which is sort of a funny thing to say as something you're passionate about. But I think what I could say, especially if I look across the companies we work with, that sort of the better decisioning around pricing of credit and provisioning of credit is actually something that's pretty cool. I guess, a lot of times if you think about something you're passionate about, you can be happy that you got a better sort of economic animal, which we often feel like we do. The thing that I would say, if you feel better at night about it, would be that you're working with somebody who's going to provide credit at better terms or greater amounts to somebody who might not have otherwise gotten it. And we've got a couple of companies that I think Cabbage does that for a lot of companies. LendUp trying to take people out of payday lending and into credit card, and LendUp actually will track. I think they're going to come up with some numbers on this, but they'll track how many people they've taken out of payday lending, and that's actually kind of a cool thing. So when I look at the things we're excited about, I think there's the core fundamental proposition that we as investors have around what you're going to do with these investments, but then also when you sort of think about it posthumously, I think you look at it and you be like, okay, we helped a team get going, or we helped fund a team that actually was able to change their industry.
And so it's not just about the innovation I'm hearing, it's also about making a difference and creating markets or reaching markets that have not been reached. Am I right with that?
I think so. That's right. And it's funny, sometimes I think this is the Maslow's hierarchy for investors, which is you have to make money first. You can't lose money, cardinal rule. And then if you start making money, which we've been fortunate enough to do, then you start thinking about the greater social good. And so I kind of feel like we've gotten into the upper parts of the pyramid, sort of thinking, okay, well, great, we did something and it's been worked out well. Do we actually feel good about what we did? And in this case, I'm quite happy with. And companies go through. It's always a roller coaster. Companies go through ups and downs. But I look at the companies we're working with and quite happy.
And in Silicon Valley, I've noted that, and what I'm finding exciting about helping and supporting building the FinTech community is that the Silicon Valley generally investors have been slow to the party. And in a way that's made the entrepreneurs very supportive of each other and helping each other, and a really good, really nice community, which I'm sort of passionate and excited about.
It's nice to see it. Yeah, no, it's really nice to see it. Well, and there's a genuine sense of like helping each other. I guess that you only get that when it starts as a bit of a smaller industry.
And not only that, I think when it's a bit tougher.
Yeah. Well, certainly, and certainly when you think about the regulatory requirements that are involved, and the capital requirements, and customer acquisition, and brand building, so definitely, I think that's there. But it's fun because I remember we went to the very first Lend It conference, and at the time it was something in a fairly small room. I think there were only like 200 people showed up, and to part of the thing that I think when we sit back and look at it and say, oh my gosh, it's when you see the industry go from that scale to 5,000 people or 10,000 people, or kind of the scale you're seeing today. And it's like one of those things where it almost feels like you had the first wave of the internet or second wave of and this is like sort of the application layer in financial services kicking in.
So where do you think credit is heading, and what is your vision of the future for credit?
It's a really interesting question. I think there's certain sort of things that I think are probably sort of natural progressions, which would be better provisioning of credit, better pricing of credit. I heard an interesting phrase, which was we'll go from predictive analytics to prescriptive analytics. Like, not what will you do, but what should you do. If you're going to build your credit, if you want to establish better credit scores, you should be doing these steps A, B, C, D, and maybe that's part of the near-term future for some of the offerings. So I could believe that. I think longer term, I do think you'll see both emerging of FinTech and some of the traditional financial institutions. But then also I think with people like SoFi, you might see somebody go out and actually create a national brand that looks much more like, almost like a Schwab, version 2.0, kind of like a national brand that is sort of a digital first or mobile first type of company. And so in that sense, I think it'll be, I think that part of it is where it'll actually get really interesting because, I think a lot of the bigger banks will have to, or what we see is they're currently reacting. I heard a great anecdote from somebody a couple of weeks ago, and he said, and I won't name whom, but sort of the CEO of one of the larger banks in North America got together with the CEO of one of the larger asset managers in North America. And, my friend had helped broker this meeting, and he said the first 20 minutes of the meeting were about this company called SoFi that he had never heard of. And he's like, when these two guys get together and that's what they're talking about for the start of the meeting, he said that, something is going on. And I think it's this realization that we might be on the receiving end of that.
So I've been organising, as you know, the Bay Area FinTech meetups and the Silicon Valley FinTech meetups, and this is one of those panels. But I'm noticing that more and more I'm getting people at banks or financial institutions signing up, and whether or not they come to the panels, I'm not sure, but they're certainly obviously circling the drain, so to speak.
I think it's funny the way we sort of see that manifesting itself is we've seen a couple people say, I'm going to go start my next lending club, or the next lending club, or I'm going to start, something like a next generation peer IQ or something like this. But they're like super experienced executives inside existing financial institutions, sort of looking at it and saying, I know this industry, I know the credit cycle, I know human behavior, and I know financial services and all these things. And I'm going to bring that and add in a tech layer. And, some of those I think will be successful, some maybe not. But the fact that, people who are like SVP level executives inside banks are looking at this as the thing they want to go do, sort of says, there's something, I think there's a recognition inside banks that, there's something going on here. So
it's good. Yeah. And so I was wondering if you could tell me, just to finish the interview, if you've got a funny story that's happened to you as an investor.
For me, I guess the funny story that I would say is, so for one of our, I won't say whom, but for one of our FinTech companies, and one of the big lenders that we've invested in, the CEO had brought in a good friend and now sort of mentor, a guy named Jim Redmond. Jim Redmond used to be like one of the chief risk officers at B of A. He was the CRO at like Providian during the housing crisis. Tremendous experience and like a life. And before B of A at like Citicorp helping set up credit cards. I mean, just tremendous history. And he brought him in as a consultant because the company got into the stage where they needed to think about sort of the systems for managing risk, not just credit policies, but like what are the risk systems. And so Jim's way of working with the company was to go through the company and meet with basically everyone who was like a VP or above. The first day, and my first day sort of on site with the company after we had invested happened to coincide with his day. So I met him for breakfast that morning. We met later in the day, and he went around to different VPs and said, so what do you think this company does? And people said, oh, we're a technology provider who does this and this and this. And somebody else said, oh, we do, we work with marketplaces and we do these things here. And he said he met with like 8 different people and got sort of 8 different versions of what do we do. And it was all based on, the experience, but a lot of it tech heavy. And he sat down with the CEO and he said, you've got a problem. And the problem is you don't have a credit culture the way you need it, because when I come here, I expect people to say, we lend people money, we get it back with interest. And, that's all they have to say. They have to fundamentally understand what their business is. And they're so caught up in all the tech capabilities of what we can do that they kind of forget exactly what you're saying, like the core. And, to me that was, it's funny because as we've invested across several companies, become much more attuned to culture. I mean, that actually has way bigger impact than, normally I think when I was younger, I thought that was kind of, all Pollyannish, sort of nice. And these days it's like, no, this will, like a lending club, this could get you in trouble. And a good credit culture will help you stay out of trouble.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to the panel tonight. It's going to be very good.
Yeah, thanks. Likewise.